Park and Farm, here to talk to you about the floodplain forest. But first of all, I want to say who I work for. I work for the US Forest Service. You can see that on the patch on my arm, and that is part of the federal government. And we take care of our nation's forests and grasslands so that they're available for today and they're there for future generations. And we also have special responsibility to take care of our 155 national forests around the country. We have Superior National Forest in northeastern Minnesota and the Chippewa National Forest in north central Minnesota. It's amazing being here today, and it's a lovely day. When I was here last Monday, it was snowing on me, and today the snow is all gone, and it definitely feels like spring. And one of the things that happens in spring when the weather warms up is ticks come out. As soon as it gets to be 50, 60 degrees, they start coming out of the ground. And so that's why I look a little bit dorky, and I have my socks tucked into my pants so that I can prevent any ticks from crawling up my leg. So I don't want that to happen. But they're just part of the natural world. So let's talk a little bit about the floodplain forest and what makes it unique. Well, what makes the floodplain forest unique is water. You can see water behind me. You might see birds flying by. And the trees that live here and the animals that live here are all adapted to water. So for the trees, the roots of these trees that are found here, and that would be cottonwood, silver maples, they don't mind getting their feet wet, as we say. And one of the things that we don't think about very much when it comes to tree roots is they actually do need some oxygen to survive. We don't think about that much because they're under the ground. So the way that happens is in the soil, there are all different sized particles. And in between the size particles, if you can think about marbles and the way marbles don't fit together exactly, there are spaces. That's where the oxygen comes from, the spaces in between the soil particles. But the thing that happens in the floodplain area, it usually annually floods. And the trees are used to that for a certain amount of time. And it's okay. Usually it floods in around this time of year, late March into April. And by mid-May, the flooding will have gone down. But if you have a time when there's a lot of snow or a lot of rain, and we have flooding that sits here for 6, 8 weeks, then there's not enough oxygen in the soil for the roots to live on, and that can be a problem for the trees. It can stress the trees out. So that's something that's unique about this environment, is what lives here is used to water. So in terms of animals, we have muskrats that live here and beavers, and we have a lot of birds that like herons and birds that will nest in the trees, but also get their food in the water. So it's an environment where you have the land and the water that is connected. But we're in a very unique spot, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been happening here. And as I walk, you might notice there's this black spot here. There's this burn pile. There's been a lot of brush that has come down because we've taken down a lot of the green ash trees that were killed by the emerald ash borer. And I'm going to tell you that story in a little bit. So just follow me down this way. The thing that I think is unique about the emerald ash borer story is two things. One is how it's got here, and two, how it was discovered. So how did it get here? Well, the emerald ash borer is from China, and we import a lot of things that we use every day from China. Well, how does that get here? You might think on a plane. Well, no, it's too expensive to get a lot of stuff here on planes. The cheaper way to do it is to do it on a ship. And so if you can think about when you've been driving around the city, you see a lot of trucks with red or orange or blue or silver containers at the back of the truck. Well, those containers were once on a ship that started out in China. And the stuff that's in the container, whether it be televisions, computers, clothing, whatever it is, it needs to be protected while it's en route on the ship, and it's protected by wood. Well, there you go. What happened was the emerald ash borer was in the wood from China, and when some ships landed in Detroit, Michigan, the emerald ash borer emerged and found ash trees here that had no defenses against it. So they had no way to protect themselves. And the story has gone on from there. And the emerald ash borer is all over the East Coast and the Midwest and moving into the South. So let's talk a little bit about its life cycle and how it aided into getting here. So it starts out, the insect will lay eggs right underneath the bark of the tree. And then those eggs hatch, and is that good? You can see there's a white looking wormish thing. That's a larvae. And that's what hatches right underneath the bark of the tree. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon it pupates, just like insects do that metamorphosize. It changes into an insect. And there you have a green, metallic green insect that will then bore its way out from the tree and then leave. But while it's in the tree, it does a lot of damage. So you can see on this piece of wood, you can see all these different tunnels. That's the larvae chewing through the wood to eat on the wood, to get food from the wood and nutrients and water from what's inside the wood. And what happens is the tree has a plumbing system that moves water and nutrients up and down. And it's right underneath the bark. And what happens is when the larvae make these tunnels, it messes up the plumbing system, and then the tree cannot move water and nutrients up and down anymore, and it kills the tree. So the other interesting part of the story is how it was discovered. Somebody, an average person, let's call them a community scientist, they found this really interesting bug. Like, oh, it's a pretty metallic green. I've never seen this before. Let's bring it to somebody who might know what it is. So they brought it to somebody locally in their town where they lived. They didn't know what it was. Eventually, this insect sample got all the way to Washington, D.C., where the Smithsonian Institution has a worldwide insect collection. So they looked and they said, it is the emerald ash borer, and it has never been here before. So we are here today in an area where there's a lot of green ash trees that are being taken down because of the emerald ash borer. So we decided to put in some study plots here, and I'm standing by one of the study plots to see what should we grow next. If our climate is changing, what trees are going to do best into the future? So we have study plots that are called the resistant study plots, where we're planting back the same trees that are here today, like cottonwood and silver maple. We have something called resilient study plots, where we're planting trees that are found in the floodplains of Minnesota, but are not here. So that would be like swamp white ash or sycamore. So they're in Minnesota, but not here. And then we have the transition plots, where we're trying to figure out, and this is the exciting part, is trees that are found in maybe Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, like pecan and yellow poplar, and sweet gum, how are they going to do in Minnesota? So that's what this study is all about. There's fencing here because deer really like to eat young trees. And so the fencing is to keep the deer out. And there'll be scientists and volunteers that are coming here for the next couple of years to take measurements and to see how the trees are surviving and take weather instruments, weather data, and see what our weather was like and see how the trees do, so we can make better decisions in the future as to what we should plant in the floodplain forest. Thank you. Now I'm ready to take some questions.
Thank you, Ranger Terry. All right, I'm looking for, you can raise your real hand, your virtual hand, or you can write in the chat if you have some questions. I think it looks like.
What about for my classroom? How do you want to do that?
I can see them. I guess if they want to come up to the screen with their hand, then I'll know to call on them. Is that possible?
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I see Henry has a question.
Are the green ash borer only attacking ash trees, or are they going to other species of trees and destroying those?
Great question, Henry. The emerald ash borer only attacks ash trees, but there are several different kinds of ash trees in our country. There's the white ash, the green ash, the black ash. It attacks all of them, and none of them have any defenses against it. Whereas the ash trees in China, there's a Manchurian ash that's found in China. It evolved with that bug, so it's developed some defense mechanisms against it that our trees don't have. And one of them is a wasp. It's a very tiny wasp that lays its eggs in the eggs of the emerald ash borer, and then it eats those eggs. So we're trying to figure out is that a very specific relationship? Will that wasp harm something else? That could be a possible biological control.
Good question. I see the classroom does have a question, so you can go ahead and ask.
Go ahead.
So when you're planting the new trees and you're measuring them, how will you know that those green bugs won't go in those trees?
Well, we're not planting any we're not planting any ash trees in this experiment. We're planting lots of other different kinds of trees, but not any ash trees. So that shouldn't be a problem for this study.
Good question. And then I see one more in the classroom.
So, is there any trees that are immune to like these kind of bugs?
It's only the ash trees.
Oh, just ash trees?
This emerald ash borer only attacks ash trees, but some bugs are very specific to their host. Other bugs, it's a good question because other bugs are more generalist and will eat lots of different kinds of trees. So it is something that is something an entomologist, that's a scientist that studies insects, an entomologist would be able to figure out, is this a very specific bug to host issue, or is it something where this bug might eat lots of different kinds of trees, and then maybe we need to be more concerned.
Nice. I see Liam has his virtual hand up.
Yes. So you said the trees in China are immune to it because they've developed defenses to it, which are a wasp.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other ashes in China that have other defenses? Because
I've only heard of the Manchurian ash, so I'm not sure. But in general, another defense that a tree has against an insect is sometimes they will produce a lot of sap around an area that's wounded by the insect. And I guess that would kind of drown out the insect. So that's another strategy that some trees do have. I don't know if that happens with the Manchurian ash, but trees have developed strategies to help protect themselves against bugs that are, trying to attack them all the time.
Nice. All right, how about Thomas, Samuel, and Helen? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, with all the bugs attacking the trees, do the beavers still use the trees after they got damaged?
Yes, the beavers, the main reason why the beavers are chewing on the trees is for food, but also to help construct their lodges. And they also chew on the trees because they have front teeth that keep on growing. And if they don't keep on chewing, their front teeth will grow too long and cover over their jaw, and then they couldn't eat. So they know that they have to keep on chewing for that reason. So I'm pretty sure that beavers will use lots of different trees and lots of different kinds of conditions.
Yeah, but wouldn't that mean the bugs would be able to eat them out of their house?
Well, there's, as I said, the beavers will use lots of different kinds of trees. So even if the ash trees are not here, there'll be other trees that they can use.
Okay, thanks.
I see another hand in the classroom. You can go ahead and ask.
I have a comment. Yesterday I was playing with a stick and I noticed the same lines that were on that piece of wood. And I think it was attacked by that emerald bug. Emerald ash borer.
Yeah, well, actually that tunneling underneath the bark, that's something that a lot of boring insects do. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was an emerald ash borer. There are lots of native beetles that are found in the Minnesota forest, and they make the same kind of tunnels. You'll see the same kind of tunnels underneath the bark. In fact, the tunnels might be shaped differently, and or have a different pattern. And that's something that will tell an entomologist what kind of bug it is. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an emerald ash borer, but that's a very good connection and observation that you made.
All right. I have a question in the chat. Why can't we import the wasps?
We are working on seeing if we can import the wasp. And we're just trying to figure out if it's going to be a problem for other tree species than the ash tree, because we don't want to have a solution that creates another problem. So they're in the midst of studying that. And hopefully, if it is specific enough to the emerald ash borer, then it could be a potential solution.
Nice. And then another question from the chat is, how long does the emerald ash to impact the tree? How long does it take?
It doesn't take very long, just 2 or 3 years. And then the tree starts really showing some serious signs of decline. You'll see branches that start dying off. And then eventually branches will start breaking off. So it doesn't take long. It's just 2 to 3 years.
Awesome. And then one last question from Karina.
It's Karina, but why is it called an ash tree? Is it does it have like ash in it or something? I'm just asking that.
That's a really good question. And I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to ask a tree specialist and see if I can find that out and let you know. That's a really interesting question.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ranger Terry. This was so informative and fun. On the count of 3, I think we should all give a big wave goodbye. Say thank you. 1, 2, 3.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, now we are going to go